Hello and welcome to the election briefing for candidates for the local elections to the Council of the Isles of Scilly. Election scheduled to take place on the 6th of May 2021. I think it's fair to say that these elections are going to be a little different. One of the differences being that we're having this briefing via a recorded session rather than meeting candidates one-to-one. But in spite of that, in spite of the challenges of holding an election with the current public health situation, we are confident that that we can deliver an election safely for candidates, safely for voters, safely for members of staff. So so there are steps have been taken to put safety measures in place, and we're confident that we can deliver the election securely. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to share the elections briefing document, which you will find either if you've had a paper nominations pack, you will find a copy of this in there, or if you've or you can find it online on the current elections webpage, where you can find the whole of the nominations pack. Let's So first things first, the person who is ultimately responsible for delivering the election is Paul Masters, the Chief Executive of the Council of the Isles of Scilly. He is the returning officer, who is the person responsible for the actual election. He's also the electoral registration officer, who is the person responsible for maintaining the register, throughout the year. So Paul is ultimately responsible, but Joseph Payne, that's me. I'm the person that you'll be dealing with on a day-to-day basis. I popped down an elections timetable for you. Obviously, there's a variety of dates there, and perhaps most significant for yourselves at the moment is the nominations deadline, which is Thursday, the 8th of April, 4 p.m. That's statutory deadline. That cannot be changed for any reason. So please be aware of that we need to have had your nomination papers formally submitted by 4 p.m. on Thursday, the 8th of April. But there's a variety of dates there as well that you might find to be helpful. And then the count. I guess perhaps the most significant other date which people will look for is the count. The count is going to take place the day after the election, as it tends to do with local elections on Scilly. So we'll be starting at about 10 o'clock on Friday, the 7th of May. But we'll be talking more about the count a little bit later. So in terms of perhaps to start, we should say that all of the usual general public health principles that have been in operation that we're all familiar with on a day-to-day basis will apply within the elections context. So all of the things that you would expect that we've all been seeing: maintaining social distancing, cleaning hands regularly, avoiding touching the face, wearing face coverings. All of these things will be, will be taking place within the polling station, and also if you as candidates meet with me as election staff to deliver nomination papers. So there are no surprises there, but the usual public health principles will apply. So the first things first, can you stand as a candidate at this election? Well, you have to be qualified, and you have to not be disqualified. So are you qualified first? Well, to be qualified to stand as a local councillor, you need to be 18. You need to be a British qualifying Commonwealth citizen or an EU citizen. In addition to that, you have to be able to meet at least one of the following 4 qualifications. And most people, I think it's fair to say, will probably meet more than one, but you need to meet at least one. And that's that you are a registered local government elector, that you occupy land or premises as an owner or tenant, that your principal or only place of work is in the local authority area, or that you've lived here for the last 12 months. In terms of disqualifications, well, there's some very particular ones that you're not allowed to be employed by the local authority. You can't be bankrupt. You can't have been sentenced to a term of imprisonment of 3 months or more within the last 5 years. But there's quite a lot of small little ones as well, and it's really important that you do read Part 1 of the Electoral Commission's guidance for candidates and agents, because ultimately you are responsible for determining whether or not you are disqualified. If you're not sure, then you really do need to look into it quite carefully. Of course, you can call us and we can have a chat about it, but it may be that you need to make inquiries elsewhere, and ultimately you will have to sign a declaration to the effect that you are not disqualified. So it's important to get it right, and it is a criminal offence to make a false statement on the nomination papers as to the qualification. and the returning officer will not be able to confirm whether or not you are disqualified. But as I say, you can, of course, you can give us a call and we can have a chat about any issues if you're not certain. The nomination packs are available on the council website. There are also hard copies can also be obtained from the Old Wesleyan Chapel upon request. Although please do give me a bell if you're going to come and collect one, because the door is locked at all times. And I put my mobile number on the door, so you can call me if you have a mobile on you at that time to let you in. But otherwise, if you could let me know in advance, then I'll be expecting you. And I can make sure that I meet you. So what do you have to do? Well, what all candidates have to do is they have to submit 3 documents. The nomination form, the home address form, which will be new to most of you, and the consent to nomination. That's what every candidate standing at the local election will have to submit. If you are a party candidate standing for a political party, you must also submit a certificate showing that they've authorised you to stand for the party. And if you wanted an emblem on the ballot paper, then you would need to ask for that as well. It's really important when you complete your nomination papers that you take care of it, because it's it's not entirely straightforward. It's important that you use Part 2 of the Electoral Commission's guidance to help you kind of take you through the process. It's not entirely intuitive at times, and perhaps the most important point to emphasise is to submit them for an informal check to me well in advance of the deadline, so that time is available to rectify mistakes. And if it's not possible to email them to me, then by all means give me a call and we can make alternative arrangements so that I can have a look at those before you formally submit them. If any changes have to be made on the document, please don't use any Tipp-Ex or any kind of corrective fluid on the documents. And we can only accept papers which include original signatures. We can't have photocopies or digital scans or anything like that. The nomination form, the home address form, the consent to nomination, those 3 key documents, they have to be delivered by hand to the elections office, to me, at the Old Wesleyan Chapel. And we can take delivery of those between 10 and 2 p.m. on any working day from now until Wednesday the 7th of April, or on the last day we'll actually we'll take them from 10 till 4 p.m. 4 p.m. being the final deadline. But please, again, do make an appointment in advance so that we know, so that I know you're coming and I can put preparations in place. The deadline can't be extended for any reason, but there are no restrictions on who can deliver them. It doesn't have to be you that delivers them. So if it's not convenient for whatever reason, then by all means you can ask someone else to do it on your behalf. The nominations will remain confidential until after the close of nominations, and then the day after the close of nominations, we will publish a statement of persons nominated, which will be the list of people who will appear on the ballot paper. So what do you need to do? So the nomination form first, the first form, what do you need to do? Well, you need to put your full name on. There's also a section called commonly used name, commonly used surname, commonly used forename. And you basically, if you want to use that box, if you take my name is Joseph Thomas Payne, so my full name would be Joseph Thomas Payne. But if I were known as Joe Payne to everybody, then I could put Joe in the commonly used forename, and then on the ballot paper it would appear as Joe Payne. It wouldn't appear as Joseph Thomas Payne. But you have to you should only put things in those boxes that are different from your actual name. So just because I don't like my middle name, I'm not allowed to put my first name down as my commonly used name with the idea being to remove my middle name from the ballot paper. That's not kind of doesn't fall within the scope of the legislation on that. So it's only different names the names that are different from your names as stated in your full name that you should put in that box. And it's entirely optional. You don't have to. Even if I were known as Joe Payne, which I'm not. Even if I were, I could still go on the ballot paper as Joseph Payne, Joseph Thomas Payne, if I so wished. There's a description field. Now, again, for party candidates, that would be where you would put the political party or another description as authorised, for use by your party. For independent candidates, which tends to be what we have here on the islands, you can either put independent or you can leave it blank, and then obviously that will dictate what appears on the ballot paper, whether or not it says independent or whether it says nothing. You have to find 2 subscribers to your nomination form. Now, this is a change. Now, normally it would be 10. but the government has changed the rules there with a view to reducing the amount of kind of contact that you have to have with other people. So it's been reduced to 2 for this election. It will go back to 10 for the next one, but on this occasion, you have to find 2 subscribers for your nomination form, and those 2 subscribers must be registered to vote in the parish in question. So if you are standing for election on St Mary's, then you need 2 registered electors in the St Mary's parish to sign as subscribers. They have to sign and print their names, and you should only ask them to enter their details after you've entered yours, so that they're kind of attesting to what you've written above. You have to give the electoral numbers of your subscribers. Now you can either obtain those details from the candidate's copy of the electoral register, which I'll come back to later, or you can just ask me for them. You can contact me and we can provide you with the details that you need to enter onto that form. And really important, the subscribers cannot sign more nomination forms than there are vacancies to be filled in the relevant electoral area. So what do we mean by that? So for the off islands, where there is only 1 seat, this means that subscribers can only sign 1 nomination paper. If an off-island subscriber signs 2 nomination papers, the first one to be delivered would be accepted, but the second one would be invalid. So it's really, really important that you make sure that when you get your paper subscribed, particularly if you're on the off islands, that your subscribers understand that they must not sign any other nomination papers. And the same principle applies on St Mary's, but given that there are 12 vacancies, subscribers here can sign up to 12 nomination forms, so it's less likely to be an issue. But it's still something to be aware of. Obviously, when you're collecting signatures, and they do have to be physical signatures, it's important to follow the public health principles, public health guidelines for social distancing and face coverings, as you would expect. And it's also important that your subscribers understand how their information will be used. Their names will be published in the notice of poll on the 27th of April. And the nomination papers are available for public inspection throughout, until polling day. So it's important that they understand how their information, how their name will be used. That's the nomination form. So the consent to nomination form, form number 2, has to include the name, the area where you're standing in. Crucially, it has to confirm which of those 4 qualifications that we looked at earlier, which of those apply. As I say, it must be at least 1, but you should select all that apply, and it may be that all of them apply. So please select all that apply to you. You need to add your date of birth, your signature, the date of consent, the witness name and signature. And you must not sign this form if you're not qualified to stand. This is where you have to declare that you're not disqualified and that you are qualified to stand to be a local councillor. The last form, the last of these kind of 3 main forms, is the home address form, which, unless you stood in the by-election which we had for the council a couple of years ago, is going to be new for you. It's something that we've had for parliamentary elections for a while, and it's a device. Until recently, it was if you were standing for local government, you had to have your address on the ballot paper. There was no option in that. The home address form is a device which means you have a choice. You can either leave your address on the ballot paper as in the past, or you can take advantage of the opportunity to not disclose your home address. So you have to complete this form. Part 1, you give your full name and address. You give the full name and address of the witness to your consent to nomination. You have to give the qualifying addresses that apply to each of your qualifications. So going back to those 4 qualifications, there is a qualifying address for each of those qualifications, and the definition of a qualifying address is given in part 2 of the Electoral Commission guidance, which you really do need to take a look at in order to fill this out correctly. And it may be the same address for all of them. That's absolutely fine, but it's just that you need to enter all of your addresses onto this page. And if you're happy for your address to go onto the ballot paper, then you don't need to fill out part 2. You can leave it blank. and then things will progress in the normal way as they would have done in the past. If you would like your home address not to be made public, then you need to fill out part 2 of the form, and you have to give the name of the relevant area in which your home address is situated. And for all addresses here, the relevant area will be the Isles of Scilly. So if you would like to withhold your address from the ballot paper and indeed from the statement of persons nominated, then you need to fill out part 2 of the home address form. Otherwise, as I say, just leave it blank, and things will progress in the usual way, and your address would appear on the ballot paper. The certificate of authorisation just for party candidates. That's basically where a party says, yes, this person is standing for us. And the emblem request is if you wanted to have, an emblem next to your name on the ballot paper, one of the party emblems. The final thing that will be in the kind of the formal nomination papers is the notification of election agent. Now, an election agent is the person responsible for the financial management of your campaign. There's a form included in your nomination pack, and we need to have that form. If you wish to appoint an agent, we need to have that form back by the close of nominations. I mean, generally speaking, people on Scilly don't have election agents in my experience, but there is an option there if you so wanted. If you don't appoint an election agent, you still have one. It's just you, so you become your own agent. But crucially, if you are going to be your own agent and you want to withhold your home address, you filled out part 2 of the home address form, then you need to provide us with an office address, because otherwise your home address will be published in the notice of election agents. Even though you filled out part 2 of the home address form. So a little bit complicated, but again, what the significant point is that if you are going to be your own election agent and you don't want your address to be made public, then you need to not only fill out part 2 of the home address form, but you also need to provide an office address for the notice of election agents. Again, in practice, this may not apply in too many cases, but it's important to understand the principles. Again, and we won't dwell on this too long, because again, we don't get a huge number of postal vote opening or polling station or count agents here. I'm not aware that we've ever had any, but you are entitled to appoint people to attend the postal vote openings, to attend the polling stations on polling day, to attend the count on your behalf, and there are appointment forms in your nomination pack to do that if you so wished. So as a candidate, once you officially become a candidate, you're entitled to receive a free copy of the electoral register and the lists of people voting by post or by proxy. And I say we mentioned this briefly earlier when we were talking about getting the electoral numbers to go on your nomination form. The point is that the earliest we can actually supply you with this, with the register, the earliest that you can officially become a candidate is actually the 29th of March. It's Monday. So if you wanted to fill out your paperwork before then you would need to come to me and ask to get the electoral numbers for your subscribers from me. If you would like to get copies of the register, then you need to make a written request. Again, the form is in your nomination pack, and we are encouraging people to receive that information electronically rather than in a paper version. Again, just to reduce social contact with you. And now there's only certain uses that you're allowed to make of that register. You can use it to help complete your nomination form, and you can use it to help you campaign if it would be helpful to do that, and also to check donations and loans. Again, perhaps something that isn't going to come up too often on Scilly. But it's important that you only use the register and the absent voting list for those purposes. And if you were to use them for any other purposes, you could face a fine for doing so. As candidates, you are very well placed to encourage people to register to vote. Please do so. Obviously, we're keen to have as many people on the electoral register as we possibly can. Please be aware that the deadline for applications to register is Monday, the 19th of April. We need to have it by Monday, the 19th of April, if somebody is going to vote at these elections. People can do an application online. It's very straightforward. You will need your national insurance number and your date of birth. That's pretty much it. and I say it only takes a few minutes. So please do encourage people to register to vote. We tend to find that election, that for all that we have the annual canvass where we look to obtain people's, we look to find out who is living where. It's often the elections themselves which drive people to register. So please help us with that if you can. In terms of absent voting, obviously voting by post or voting by proxy, there are deadlines for submitting applications in order to do that. But the first thing to say is that you can't, even if you submit an application to vote by post or an application to vote by proxy, you can only do that if you are on the electoral register. You still need to register to vote. So if you're encouraging people to register for a postal vote or for a proxy vote, then please make sure they are registered to vote, because just filling out a postal vote application form won't register you. The deadline for submitting an application for a postal vote is the 20th of April, and the deadline for a proxy vote is a week later. And in some circumstances, and this will include if you were required to self-isolate due to COVID, you'll be able to apply for an emergency proxy up until polling day itself. So there have been special arrangements put in place for the fact that people may need to self-isolate due to COVID. So one of the things which I know I've spoken to a number of people about, potential candidates, is the issue of campaigning. What are you allowed to do and what are you not allowed to do? And there is pretty good guidance on this. So guidance on campaigning in the current public health context. It has been published by the government on their website, and there is the link to it. And as you'll see when you have a look at it, leafleting and door-to-door campaigning are permitted, provided that robust public health measures are in place. But please do have a look at that document if you're planning to campaign. But as I say, broadly speaking, it's recognised that it's important that it's an important part of the democratic process that candidates are able to put their message to the electorate. So you say bear that in mind. What campaigning do's and don'ts? What do you need to do? Well, you must use imprints on all your printed campaign material and any electronic campaign material that is designed to be printed off to show who is responsible for its production. So by an imprint, we mean it's a statement to say who has printed and promoted this material. And you'll find kind of wording for wording that can be used for imprints in Part 4 of the Electoral Commission's guidance. So it's important, if you're going to be producing any literature, it's important that you include an imprint along the lines required by the Electoral Commission. I say you must do that if it's going to be printed in any way. You should also do it if you're going to have campaign material on a website, although it's not a legal requirement at the moment to do that. No campaign material should be displayed on any council property. Please don't produce any material that looks like a poll card. Please don't pay people to display your adverts unless that's what they unless that's part of their normal course of business. And on polling day, you may not campaign inside a polling station, although, as we'll see in a moment, you are able to campaign outside the station if you so wish. And this is an important one. Please don't offer lifts to voters or facilitate car sharing. Car sharing has been identified as one of the particular risks. A particular driver is the view of infections for COVID. So there's a strong message coming out of the government, which is not to offer lifts to voters or to facilitate car sharing in any way. There is a code of conduct for campaigners. You have a copy in your nomination pack, so please have a look at that. It is important that the campaigners' activities don't bring into question the integrity of the electoral process. So what do we have? We said voters should be encouraged to return their applications directly to the electoral registration officer. So rather than giving them to you to pass on, it's better if people submit their paperwork directly to us. Having said that, if you do receive any applications, then please ensure that they're sent on to us within 2 working days. And if you're encouraging people to vote by post, please make it clear that there are implications to that. They won't therefore be able to vote in a polling station, although you actually are able to hand in your postal vote at the polling station or to the elections office at the Old Wesleyan Chapel itself up until 10 p.m. on polling day. But you can only hand in your postal vote at your polling station. So if you were an elector on St Martin's, you can't hand it in at the Tresco polling station. You wouldn't also be able to hand it in at the St Mary's polling station, but you would be able to hand it in to me at the elections office, which is in the same building. So that's not such of an issue. So anyone can hand them in on St Mary's to the elections office. Please don't encourage postal ballot pack redirection. That's where people have their ballot papers sent to a different address. One of the things which kind of sets off alarm bells about electoral integrity is if a large number of postal votes are being redirected to a particular address. And please don't encourage electors to appoint a campaigner or a candidate as proxy. If somebody's going to have a proxy vote, it's much better that it should be someone, a friend or a relative, rather than someone who is particularly associated with somebody's campaign. A couple of particular things: please never touch a postal ballot paper. Never observe an elector completing a postal ballot paper, even though it's a postal ballot. It's still important that people vote in secrecy. And perhaps the one that's most likely to come up is to please never take a completed ballot pack from a voter. So let's say somebody asks you to take their postal ballot pack and pop it into the post box or into the elections office. Please don't take any postal ballot packs. Please ask them to contact a friend or a neighbour, or if necessary, you can contact us and we'll make alternative arrangements to arrange for it to be collected. So yes, please don't touch other people's ballot papers. It helps to just keep things entirely kind of clear and straightforward. And I mentioned kind of campaigning outside of polling stations. I say you are allowed to put your message to voters on polling day. You're allowed to campaign on polling day, including in public spaces outside of polling places. But obviously, it would always be important to ensure that that people, that there was that the pavements were kept clear and access wasn't restricted. It's particularly important in the current public health situation to ensure that social distancing is observed at all times. And I dare say members of the public might not take it too kindly to it if people are getting too close. So polling day itself, well, we have put arrangements in place to ensure that polling stations are safe places to vote. And please, if you're talking to people then about voting in this election, please do take the opportunity to reassure people that polling places will be safe places to vote. On the off islands, we'll be operating a one-in, one-out system. On St Mary's, the numbers are such that that's probably not really practical, but we'll be restricting the number of voters in the polling station to 3 at any one time. All of our polling stations will be operating one-way systems, and to facilitate that, we've actually moved the St Martin's polling station from the reading room into the main hall. The voters are encouraged to bring their own pen or pencil. Although pencils will be available, but to say it's again just to reduce the amount of kind of touch points, if you like. People are being encouraged to bring their own pen and pencil, and then, as you would expect, people will need to wear face coverings unless they're exempt. There'll be floor markings to ensure the social distancing, hand sanitizer on the way in and on the way out. And if you are in St Mary's, you might like to remind people that the polling station's in the Old Wesleyan Chapel, not the Town Hall. Obviously, it was in the Town Hall for quite a long time, up until a couple of years ago, and I think on election days, I dare say, a number of people will turn up at the Town Hall. We'll put signage up to redirect people, but it might be as well, if you get the opportunity, it might be as well to remind people. So, access to key electoral events. So this is your access as candidates to the verification process, the counting processes which take place. So you're entitled to attend postal vote opening sessions. Again, generally speaking, on Scilly, people, as far as I'm aware, we've never had anyone attend one of those. No votes are counted at that time. It's just about opening and verifying the postal vote openings, the postal ballots. But you are entitled to attend. The first postal vote opening session will take place a couple of days before polling day in the Old Wesleyan Chapel at 10 o'clock, or that hopefully in the Old Wesleyan Chapel. The second postal vote opening session will take place immediately after the close of polls. So at the end of at 10 o'clock on Thursday the 6th of May, the polls will close, the ballot boxes will come back, and the first thing we will do then is open the second batch, the final batch of postal votes, including those that have been handed in at the polling station through the course of the day. And then immediately after those postal votes have been opened, we will then verify the ballot papers. So again, no counting here, at least not counting votes. What we will be doing here is we'll be counting the number of papers, and to make sure that the number that we have matches the number which the presiding officers and the polling stations say we should have. So again, you are entitled to attend the verification if you so desired. Again, it's not something that people have generally have come to in the past, but you are entitled to do so if you wanted. The count, when the votes will actually be counted, will be taking place at, as I say, the day after polling day on Friday the 7th, and will be starting at 10 o'clock. Now, for public health and logistical reasons, we're keen to hold all of those events in the Old Wesleyan Chapel. It's obviously better and safer, if you like, for to use as few venues as possible, and we would very much like to use the Old Wesleyan Chapel, but it's not an enormous space. I think, all things being even, we would have used the town hall, but obviously that's not an option at the moment. And given the need to maintain social distancing, it's only going to be possible for us to use the Old Wesleyan Chapel if the number of non-members of staff attending these events is 3 or fewer. So we really are talking, not very many attendees at all. Now, given the low levels of attendance at postal vote opening sessions and verifications in the past, we don't think that's going to be a problem for those events, but we do appreciate that there's a much greater interest in the count. When, again, all things being even, we would have expected a significant attendance of candidates and others. So what we're proposing is to establish a live video stream of the count for candidates via Teams. We're proposing to have an officer present on that call so that they can monitor inquiries from candidates. We would ensure that doubtful ballot papers were shown to candidates on that video stream, so that candidates have the opportunity to object or to comment on those. We would ensure that provisional results would be communicated to candidates on that video stream, with an opportunity to request a recount before any result would be announced. So we're hoping that we can put a system in place which will provide candidates with all the things that they need without actually having to be present at the count itself. Having said that, we absolutely recognise that candidates, election agents, counting agents, and indeed one other person appointed by the candidate are entitled to attend the count if they so wish. You are entitled to come if you want to. But what we would ask is, please let us know if you or anyone, anyone, as part of your team are planning to attend any of those events. Because if more than 3 people are planning to, well, let's just take the postal vote openings and the verification. If we had more than 3 people planning to come to that, we would look to provide a live video stream. And if more than 3 people are planning to come to the count, even though we've got the live video stream, then we would need to move the event to the sports hall. So just to be clear again, please let us know if you're planning to come to the postal vote opening, the verification, or the count. If we have more than 3 people coming, then we'll need to make alternative arrangements. And if ultimately more than 3 people want to come, it will be necessary to move those events to the sports hall, and that can be done. I mean, it's just it's not ideal for a number of reasons, but that's what we would do if it was necessary. What's really important is that people don't say they're not going to come and then turn up on the door, because if you turn up on the door, you're still entitled to attend. And we would, if it were possible to maintain social distancing, we would have to suspend the count and rearrange it for another venue and on another day. So, please let us know. It would make things a lot simpler for us if we were able to do this in the Old Wesleyan Chapel. But if you're keen to come to the count, then you're entitled to do so. And please let us know, and we can make alternative arrangements. What I would point out, though, is that the count's probably going to go on for a while. We're going to have fewer members of staff than we would normally have. It's quite a complicated process, particularly counting the St Mary's ballots. There's not too many 12-member wards in the or 12-member parishes in the country, so it's not going to be a quick process. It's never a quick process, and it's going to be significantly longer this time than it might normally have been. And then the other thing which is often forgotten is that that you are required to submit a return of your candidate spending, which is defined as certain expenses used for the purposes of the candidate's election during the regulated period. Now, the regulated period begins on the day after you officially become a candidate and ends on polling day. And as I mentioned before, the earliest date you can officially become a candidate is the 29th of March. So you need to keep a record of your spending on the for the purposes of your election during that regulated period. It's the responsibility of the election agent ultimately, although the candidate does also have to submit a declaration that the return is correct. Although again, given that most people are likely to be their own election agents, that's probably a distinction without a difference on Scilly. There is a limit on the amount that you can spend for a local election, and that limit is it's been increased. It's £806 plus 7 pence per elector in your parish. And I popped the numbers down there of the number of local government electors in each parish, so you can figure out exactly what your limit is for your parish by doing the maths on that. Again, I don't think anyone's ever got particularly close to the limit in the past, but you never know. If someone's particularly enthusiastic, then we might kind of get close one day. You need to get and keep receipts for anything over £20, and they will need to be submitted as part of your return. So it is important that you have a look at Part 3 of the Electoral Commission's guidance here, so that you have a clear sense of what you need to record and what you will need to submit. So you have to submit your return along with relevant invoices and receipts within 35 calendar days of the declaration, which for this election means the deadline is Friday, the 11th of June. Now, you need to submit a spending return even if you didn't spend any money, and we've had a few of those over the years, as you can imagine, and even if the election is uncontested, and those returns will remain available for public inspection for 2 years. And it's important. It's a failure. If you don't submit this, it's a criminal offence which is enforceable by the police. So it is important that we get these. I know there's probably not a huge amount of enthusiasm, particularly if a campaign hasn't been successful, but it does need to be done. And just to be clear, when people talk about election expenses, there's no reimbursement here. You don't get any of this money back. It's just that there are rules about how much you can spend on an election, which have to be monitored. And then the final point to make, a few contacts and a few links which will be helpful. There's my details up there at the top, and then a few details for the Electoral Commission. The guidance for candidates and agents there is the general guidance, which applies in all cases and is really important. I would urge you to have a look at that. And then below we've got the guidance on campaigning at the current time, which is also quite very important if you're going to be if you are going to be campaigning in any particular way. So yeah, so that's I'm just going to how do I come out of the screen share. So yeah, so obviously that's essentially all that I wanted to say today. Perhaps the last point to make is that I am available as I'm a resource for you during this period. Any questions, please let me know. Nothing's foolish. Anything at all. Anything which is troubling you, get in touch, and we can sort it out. And perhaps as a final thought, just to urge you, as I say once again, just to submit where possible, submit your paperwork as early as possible, so that we have time to put anything right if anything is wrong on the paperwork. But yes, apart from that, thank you very much, and I will see you at some point, no doubt, in the not too distant future. Goodbye.